Everybody's told me that you cannot use cheap hobby paints to paint Warhammer miniatures, and this is why I decided to prove everybody wrong. So let's start this off with the worst trial of them all, using the cheap hobby paints with an airbrush. So we're gonna have to dilute the paint with a lot of water, so we don't clog the airbrush. But as you can see, it's very much possible if you do it right. Then let's move on to the paintbrush. And because these paints aren't designed to paint miniatures, you need to paint a lot more coats on the miniature so it actually covers. But again, it's very much possible. And to paint the rest of the details on this miniature, we need to dilute the paint a lot with water to be able to paint some smooth transitions. And even though it's a lot harder to paint using cheap hobby paints instead of miniature paints, as you can see, it's possible. And the last test obviously has to be dry brushing. So we grab a little bit of paint, and using our dry texture palette, we need to brush it all over, and then brush it all over our miniature. And as you can see, the effect is pretty clear. Lastly, we need to paint the face on our miniature. And of course, the hardest detail of it all, her eyes. But again, very possible. So I guess the moral of the story is, as long as you're willing to experiment with new materials, anything and everything is possible to paint Warhammer miniatures. So, what do you think?